Thank you for tuning in to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, the show that is part of the Simply Luxurious Life online destination, cultivating true contentment, the art of living a life of quality over quantity. Visit the blog, The Simply Luxurious Life, at our simplified URL, TSLL.co or thesimplyluxuriouslife.com to find the show notes for each podcast episode, as well as much more weekly content to elevate your everyday and deepen your contentment. From a Monday motivational post, recipes, videos of the cooking show series, style and decor inspiration, French and British inspired content, and readers' favorite regular weekly post, This and That, which is posted each Friday morning. Now to today's episode. Welcome to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. I'm your host, Shannon Ables. And whether you're listening on your commute, exercising, working in the garden, or sitting down with a hot cup of tea or a cafe au lait, thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. Welcome to the 380th episode of The Simple Sophisticate. And in today's episode, the topic centers itself around rituals. And while if you've been a longtime listener and or reader of the blog, you know we've talked about rituals quite a bit. But in today's episode, we're really going to get into the logistics of what a ritual is and how it differentiates itself from a habit. Both are beneficial, but both provide different opportunities. And how does that intentionality of choosing to incorporate certain rituals, how does that increase the quality of our life? Because it does. Science studies have shown that it absolutely does. But before I get to breaking all that down in today's episode, I promised on Instagram, because as soon as I made this recipe, I was like, oh, this is a perfect spring recipe. So simple and very delicious, as well as healthy in aspects of it. Not everything, but in a lot of the aspects. Anyway, I have a recipe I'm going to walk you through because you can easily make it in 20 minutes, have it in the oven, wait 25, and you'll be having it paired with a glass of crisp white wine, whatever your varietal or preference is. So stay tuned, because at the end of the episode, I'll be sharing with you what that recipe is, and you'll be able to print it off and have it for yourself. All right, but back to today's topic. The title of today's episode is How Rituals Enrich Our Lives If, and I put that in caps because it's so imperative, we choose and engage with intention. Now, I want to begin with a quote from the book that inspired today's episode. And it, as I mentioned, we talk about rituals so often here. I found this book to be a wonderful enhancer of demonstrating why rituals, we've known it, we intuitively have felt it, we've experienced it, but why? What's going on? What's the difference between a ritual and a habit? And so this book really talks us through that, but also at the same time, we're going to share lots of examples along the way. So if you've read the post or the show notes on the blog, in this episode, yes, we'll walk through the show notes, but I'm also going to be sharing various examples that he shared and in my own life as well. So the quote is, "Rituals delineate a sacred space to keep people connected to the present moment," from Dr. Michael Norton, author of The Ritual Effect. Now, immediately, when I read that quote, I said, this is what I want to share with the listeners and the readers, because a core component, a core skill, because it is a skill, is knowing how to hold ourselves in the present moment, because that is where life is lived. That is the only place life is lived. In the matter of a blink of an eye, tomorrow, the next moment becomes now. And so we have to know how to hold ourselves in the moment, the present moment. And one way is through rituals. So that is why I really wanted to bring this episode to you, is because it teaches us another way to strengthen that skill. And it is a skill. We choose to learn it. to remain present, because that is when we see our life. That is when we make decisions. That is where our life changes. All right, not in our worries, not in our hopes, but in today with our actions, our awareness, and our choices. So, and our thoughts, to be fair, in the present moment. Part of being in the present moment, as we've talked about many, many times, is knowing how to handle our thoughts, not to be rash, not to react, but to respond and to understand that we can be an objective observer of our thoughts. And so rituals are done with intention. If we are doing our rituals, they are things that we've chosen, if they are truly, truly going to be the benefit that we want them to be. And we'll talk about various types of rituals. But if we want them to be the benefit that they can be, we have to bring intentionality to it. So let's dive into that. I'm going to paint a picture for you here for a moment. A Brown Betty teapot, in my case, it's a cobalt, so dark blue teapot, is full of steeped black tea. A petite dish full of healthy nibbles rests beside it. A favorite French candle is lit, offering a gentle reminder of Paris streets. The focus on the computer has been turned on for a handful of hours, and the pups race to the office as I carry the tray with my teacup and goodies to begin the workday. First, before I commence my work, Norman and Nell receive their treat, something they savor each time Mom types away at the computer. And with everything now situated, I gaze out the window that looks over the front walk where the peach and chokecherry branches sway in the breeze, announcing the time has arrived to write as the pups settle in for their nap following our morning walk, and the room becomes quiet except for the unsyncopated tap, tap, tap on the keyboard. This is our morning workday ritual, and it has been designed or intentionally curated or chosen the details because of what it gives, what it announces, and what it helps to remind that I need to focus on. It's also important for me to share that I don't do these without thinking. I am savoring this ritual every morning, primarily because I didn't have the opportunity to have mornings like this for 20 years. And so I am appreciating every single day I have the opportunity to have this type of schedule. And so the fact that my pups are happy and smiling and joining me when I work, I relish that. When I'm walking into the office, I'm not racing. They may be racing, but I'm not racing. And I'm pouring that teacup, watching the steam rise, and just am grateful that I get to have a workspace that's calm and peaceful with natural daylight. I'm paying attention to the details. I am savoring. This is where we're going to kind of lead into with that difference between habits and rituals. I am not doing this mindlessly. There are things that are helpful to do mindlessly if they're helpful and they've initially been chosen by us, and then we can forget about them and go about our day. There are things that are helpful to be able to do that with. But this is a ritual because I am fully conscious. Nothing else is grabbing my attention. I'm not checking my emails yet. I am not taking calls yet or making calls yet. And I am just taking in all the details that make it possible, and then how I've elevated this moment that can be a drudgery. If I looked at, oh, I have to start the day, I have to go to work, I have to be back in the office, I can't be outside. I'm shifting my mindset. Number one, I love what I do, so I'm very grateful, as I've talked about many times. And so I'm making this as pleasurable and as enjoyable for myself and the pups so that they enjoy it, because this way they can rest, they've had their walk, and I can be productive. So let's break down this difference between a habit and a ritual. Now, rituals, whether designed by us solely for ourselves, as was the case that I just described, or legacy rituals that are passed down to us that we observe as children, maybe not knowing what the heck they are. We just go through the motions as children, and then as we grow up, we learn more about why we do them, or relationship or group rituals that involve others. All of them give us more than can be imagined to deepen the quality of our life than we thought possible prior to fully engaging and incorporating them into our lives. And I'm going to share caveats throughout this especially with regards to legacy rituals, we have to understand what they are. And then we have to ask ourselves, do we value that? Because if we don't value the action that we're taking, then it's not a true ritual and we're not going to get the benefit out of it. It's just going to become a habit or a routine. All right. So you may recognize the author of the book that we're going to talk about today, The Ritual Effect. Dr. Michael Norton is a professor of business administration at Harvard Business School, and he co-wrote a book in 2013. And it was often cited with its research done on the effects of money and happiness. And he wrote this with Elizabeth Dunn. And I have this book in my library. I thoroughly appreciated their findings and their observations and their teachings. It is titled Happy Money, The Science of Smarter Spending. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend picking it up because their work has often been cited on the blog here, on the podcast, but also in my first book. So it was with his new book that was released this past April, The Ritual Effect, that shares the research behind the effects of rituals on our daily life. And while he begins with sharing rituals' origins, which we might often imagine when we hear the word referencing rigid or communal practices, often associated with religion, but it could be with anything, with certain cultures, anything that's been around for centuries. That might be what initially comes up in our mind's eye when we think about rituals. And he does talk about that just to give us a background. And he describes them, as I mentioned earlier, as legacy rituals. We're not creating them on our own. These are not our ones that we have established and come with our initial and primary meaning. They have been passed on to us. In many ways, they are traditions. But the primary focus rests upon daily life in his book and all of the potential benefits that rituals can give us, whether it be in our daily routine or when we step into a new life chapter or when we say goodbye to someone for any number of reasons, or how we work, how we connect and strengthen relationships, how we design holidays with families and blended families, and how to heal. And also, he points out in one entire chapter how to recognize when rituals are causing the problem, whether it be division or exclusion, which they can absolutely do with regards to exclusion, separation. And again, that's when we have to ask ourselves, do I hold these values in my life? And do I want to keep doing these? And it really just depends on what it is. Okay, there's so many different variations out there. But to do it consciously, that is the key here, to be very aware of what we do and why we're doing it. So that's where his book goes with regards to recognition of legacy rituals, but then a primary focus on the ones we cultivate, whether just for ourselves or with others in our lives in the various arenas of our lives. And so, for our purposes today, in episode 380, we're going to focus primarily on exactly what constitutes a ritual, the importance of having them in our lives, and where I'll be sharing a handful of examples of where and how to incorporate them, as well as sprinkle examples throughout this conversation. All right. So, let's begin with knowing what the difference is between a ritual and a habit. Here on The Simple Sophisticate and on the blog, The Simply Luxurious Life, we've shared an abundance about both rituals and habits. It is important to note that both are greatly beneficial to living a life of true contentment. And so to know the difference will be helpful as we tailor our life to fit our needs, dreams, and strengths. Now, on the show notes, I've linked to all the posts that have been written, and this includes episodes and their show notes that have been written about rituals, and then all the posts and episodes that have been written about habits. So if there's one you really want to dive into, or maybe both, just kind of explore what was offered over the last 14 years, you can click those links in this section of the show notes. Now, essentially, the distinction between a ritual and a habit comes down to what versus how, as explained by Norton. Let's break it down. Quote, habit is the what. It's something we do. End quote. The action, such as making our tea, taking our walk, singing that particular song, anything that we engage in presently, anything that is an action and done entirely on its own, that it can become a habit. This could be in our professional life, personally, at home, outdoors, while traveling, while we're sitting at our desk. You get the idea. Something that we've talked about before in episode 272 is that when bad habits have been conditioned into our daily lives and have become a default, because that's what a habit does. It's something we do without thinking about it. There's a prompt of something and we just are, oop, that's what I do. And you don't think about it. And we want good habits to happen that way because that frees our mind up. But if they're bad habits, we have to figure out what that prompt is that's causing us to do it and change it. And I break that down in episode 272 if you want to get into that. A habit by definition is something we don't think about, and we realize the habit needs to change if it's not helping us live the life we want to live. We have to know how to break the habit so that the good habit then becomes ingrained into our daily routine and it becomes something we don't think about. We just do it. And that is the key. Again, this is something we discussed in episode 272, how to consciously welcome good habits into our life. Great detail, a wonderful book that inspired that episode. The goal and why we want habits in our life is so we don't have to think about whatever that particular action is. We just do them essentially automatically with a particular prompt when that prompt happens. So when the alarm clock goes off, you immediately get up. Okay, that's good. Okay, what do you immediately go and do? If it's something that's constructive and helps begin the day well, then that is a good prompt. If the alarm clock goes off and it's a noise you hate and you immediately start cursing or negative thoughts go through your head, that's probably not the right prompt. You probably want a gentler way to wake up. Again, when you think about it through those lenses of, okay, what's the prompt and what's it causing me to do, then we just have to change the prompt. But then again, figuring out what the right prompt is part of the journey too. Any number of things could be a habit. We get out of bed, we brush our teeth, we do stretches, we do sun salutations, we feed our animals, our cats, our pups, our chickens. We don't think, we just do. Action. Norton goes on to share, quote, "We want that good habit to become automatic. We effortlessly, mindlessly perform routines that take us from point A to point B." And that's the key thing here. Often we say the word routine. If it's something we do not have to think about, that routine is a habit. And they can be good and beneficial to us. So with these good habits, we bolster the life that is nourishing to us, that cares for what we value. And if the habits are leading to a goal, eventually we arrive where we wanted to end up because each little action that we take adds up. So it's, again, just action. That's all a habit is a repeated action that we do without thinking. Now you may be saying, but doesn't a ritual also involve action? And yes, you would be correct. But quote, "A ritual is not just the action, but the particular way we enact it, the how," end quote. How we partake in the ritual, what precisely we do, quote, "how we complete it." Rituals are also deeply and inherently emotional. Unlike most habits, rituals provoke feelings. It's the emotion and meaning we bring to the behaviors that make it a ritual, end quote. In other words, it is what we add to the action that we are engaging in, why we are engaging in this action, what is our intention for engaging in this action. And that's why intention has to be part of the recipe for it to be truly a ritual, not a routine. And we'll talk about this when we talk about relationships. You can be in a relationship and there may be a ritual. It's perceived as a ritual by one person. There's all this emotion attached to it. They love doing it every single morning, or maybe it's every week, whatever it is. The other person just goes through the motion because they know the partner loves it, but to them it's just a routine. There's no emotion invested in it. And we'll talk about this too. When that happens, those relationships often not necessarily don't go the distance because they didn't bear out that evidence, but they talked about how these relationships weren't as strong and weren't as emotionally responsive and loving towards each other. So that how is crucial, and it only comes with intention. So another way to look at the difference between habits and rituals, quote, "Good habits automate us, helping us get things done. Rituals animate us, enhancing and enchanting our lives with something more," end quote. So that is the key difference between a habit and a ritual. The what is habit, the how is making it a ritual. When we add intention to this recipe, this action, we have a ritual. So now that we know the difference, let's talk about what we gain, what we add to our lives by incorporating rituals into them. I have a list of 4 general benefits, and I'll describe and work through them, each of them. But the number one is we savor. We learn how to be someone who savors. And again, we talked briefly in the example at the start of this episode. Savoring holds us in the present moment because we are fully aware, we see, we appreciate. And so savoring becomes a well-toned muscle, or in this case, a skill. But if we're looking at it figuratively, it's a muscle that once we start doing this more often, having more rituals in our lives that we have intentionally created or chosen or welcomed or helped remain in our life, this is actually a habit that's good because it's a skill that benefits the quality of our life. And so the more we are doing it, the easier it is to default to savoring, to appreciating. When we experience savoring in our days, which is and can only be an intentional act, our everyday life is enriched. So from the moment we wake up until we thoughtfully bring our days to a close, our entire day can be elevated simply by remembering to savor the rituals that we've incorporated and the life we have chosen to live. So that is the first benefit or way that our life becomes elevated. A second, and these are in no particular order, we put ourselves in the driver's seat as to how we use technology. Now, I just wanted to use this one more specifically because he speaks about how if we're trying to hold ourselves in the present moment, we have to design our days to be nourishing. And when we live with intention, creating rituals to savor throughout our days in life, we bring more meaning to our days and thus live in the present, which finds us incorporating rituals that optimize and capture our full attention. So we no longer are just mindlessly scrolling. We have rituals. Okay, this is the time of day it is. This is what I'm doing. This is the day of the week that it is. This is what I'm doing. And so when you have motivation that is a reward, so whatever that ritual is something you enjoy, something that elevates your life, it's easier to step away from things that don't add value or simply just take time away from savoring because it's just you're just searching, you're constantly searching, or you're mindlessly keeping on going through your email and trying to bring that inbox to a zero, which it never will be. And if it does within an hour, let alone maybe 24 hours, okay, we have email. So my point is, with rituals, we help structure our day so that we don't get sucked into habits that are not nourishing. We put boundaries up more easily. This can happen with everything, not just technology, but so much of our life revolves around technology, finds us searching, finds us trying to finish, finds us trying to whatever it might be that seems endless. This helps us get out of that unhelpful cycle and put those boundaries up. So that's the second benefit. The third is that it enhances our well-being to have rituals. So research of emotions, specifically a term they've created called emo diversity. So EMO diversity, emo diversity shows that the diversity of our different shades of emotion. So for example, amusement, elation, awe, and gratitude, but also sadness, fear, and anxiety adds up to richer emotional levels and links to our overall well-being. The variety and relative abundance of emotions we experience, not just the predominance of positive emotions, predicts our well-being, end quote. What rituals provide that habits cannot are deeper and more variation of emotional experiences. Quote, rituals offer the possibility of transforming activities as ordinary as our morning hygiene routine, household chores, or daily exercise from automated to animated experiences, which conjures up delight or wonder or peace. So by adding the how we do something, we are infusing it with a variety of different emotions. And as we mentioned at the top of this episode, the rituals that we're going to talk about and that he talks about in depth involve mourning, involve things coming to an end, involve stepping into new chapters. So not all the emotions are always going to be on the positive side. There are going to be moments of grief, sadness, pain. But if we honor those feelings, those emotions through a ritual, that is what creates the diversity of emotions. And there needs to be, a variety of them. And that actually enhances our well-being when we do it again with intention. So yes, we may be grieving, but this is a ritual that helps us honor. This is a ritual that reminds how much we love this person who we no longer have, or how much that life chapter gave us. And we're extending appreciation. There may be a bittersweet emotion there. There may be also excitement about what's going to happen or anything in between. But the idea is by infusing our lives with rituals, we let ourselves feel in a way that we can design, and so therefore it's a little bit more safe, more secure, but at the same time it lets us move through so that we can progress through our lives well. Notice that this all must be a choice to turn our helpful habits, a helpful morning routine full of habits that are done without forethought, into a ritual that fully engages us and that we have designed with thought and care to what will enliven us and help us savor what we are doing, what we need to do. So, as we mentioned with contentment, contentment is a mode of travel. It is how we engage with life, with the things we have no control over. We only have control over our own thoughts, actions, anything that's within us. We do not have control beyond us. But how we engage, how we navigate through it, our mode of transportation, will determine whether or not we invite unnecessary suffering, unnecessary stress into our lives. So yes, things are going to happen that we don't want, that cause pain. But if we are creating rituals to help us move through it, experience it in a healthy way, navigate it well so that we don't have regret in how we engage with it, then we create a life that has a strong well-being. And thus, when we ground our life in true contentment, we have more self-trust that we can handle anything that we are going to be presented with. All right. So that's the third benefit of creating rituals. The fourth and final one I'm going to talk about, I'll break this down a little bit more. We provide a way to manage nervousness and successfully do what we know we can do while we are responsible for learning the necessary skills. So I'm just going to use an example, maybe from childhood. You've prepared for an exam. You have studied, you have taken the necessary courses, you've been in class every day, you've asked questions, you know this content. I mean, when people quiz you or your friends quiz you, you know this. Bar none, you have the knowledge, you are ready. But maybe on test day, you get super nervous and you are worried, for whatever reason, and everyone has their own reason, there's just something that's holding you back from doing your best. You get in your own way mentally. So yes, we have to be responsible for the necessary skills in order to be successful at whatever pursuit we're going to give a shot at. Okay. And a ritual, it's important to point out that a ritual is not going to change what we know. We are responsible for going to class, to learning the skills, whatever it might be. What the ritual does, though, is that it reminds us to focus and do what we know we can do and basically get out of our own way, helping us let go of unhelpful thoughts and worries. And so this is where the self-curated ritual has to be from you. What is it you can do for that ritual? If you know you're going to get nervous before that big speech in front of your entire corporation, what is it you can do to set your nerves down and give the speech that you are more than ready to give? That's what a ritual helps with. It doesn't guarantee the outcome, because if you're not prepared, no ritual is going to, teach you what you didn't study. The ritual helps you get out of your own way. And he speaks about various athletes. Rafael Nadal came up. As we know, Rafael Nadal has so many rituals. Okay. The point being is it's him being prepared. He is ready. He is fit. He is knowledgeable of the game of tennis. The ritual just puts his mind in the right space so he will do what he already knows how to do and do it well. All right. Now, if I did the same rituals as Rafael Nadal and I was there playing tennis, I'd still get walloped because I don't know how to play tennis like he does. See the difference? The ritual helps you just get out of your own way. Okay. It's also important to note that we can't let rituals slide into being superstitions. In other words, when we are not able to do exactly what we need to do in our ritual. So say, for example, the power goes out and your alarm that wakes you up gently doesn't happen. Oh no, the day's not going to go in the right direction. You immediately think that, wait a second. We can't let our mind slip into unthoughtful doubt to believe that we can't have a good day simply because our alarm clock didn't go off. It would have helped. It would have absolutely helped, but we are still capable of having a good day. We are going to have to be very conscious about the reality that, okay, that's going to happen sometimes, just as in life. We don't have control over everything. So how are we going to navigate forward? What do we have control over? In other words, rituals are passengers along our journey that we invite to come with us. They are not the driver of how or where things will go. They enhance, but otherwise don't distract if not present. So keep rituals in their place and keep yourself at the steering wheel, and you are going to have a wonderful journey. All right, so those are the 4 benefits that help enhance the quality of your life by bringing in rituals. Now, I have one sponsor I want to introduce you to, but when I come back, we're going to share all sorts of places and arenas in your life where rituals can come into play and how we can incorporate them into our life. I'll be right back. The Simple Sophisticate is sponsored by Miracle Made. Did you know that your temperature at night can have one of the greatest impacts on your sleep quality? If you wake up too hot or too cold, I highly recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. Inspired by NASA, Miracle Made uses silver-infused fabrics and makes temperature-regulating bedding so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. Miracle Made uses self-cooling properties for a better quality sleep. Inspired by NASA, they use silver-infused fabrics, which makes the sheets thermo-regulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, so you get better sleep every night. And because they're infused with silver, they prevent 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresher 3 times longer than any other sheets. And speaking of sleeping comfortably, Miracle Sheets are luxuriously comfortable, without the high price tag of other luxury brands, and feel as nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some 5-star hotels. And they're designed to help your skin as well. Bacteria, as we know, can clog pores, causing breakouts and acne. But with Miracle Made sheets, you can sleep clean with Miracle, which stops the bacteria from occurring. As a Simple Sophisticate listener, go to trymiracle.com/simple. That's trymiracle.com/simple to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use the promo code SIMPLE at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Having slept on these sheets, I can share that indeed my temperature was regulated and I had a lovely, long night's sleep. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/simple and use the promo code SIMPLE to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/simple to treat yourself. And be sure to let Miracle Made know that the Simple Sophisticate sent you. Welcome back. All right, let's talk about where to incorporate rituals into our life. Well, we may have legacy rituals in our life, and in such a case, make sure, as we talked about before on the blog and in my third book, that you know why you are doing these legacy rituals if you have chosen to keep them in your life, and that they align with what you value. Otherwise, these are examples of how rituals can be unhelpful and drain us unnecessarily, as we are not living consciously nor fully engaged with our life, simply going through the motions, which is why the importance of welcoming signature rituals into our life cannot be understated. A ritual signature, as Norton describes it, so I call it signature ritual, but he does call them ritual signature, is just what you might imagine. They are personal. Quote, creating them inspires a sense of ownership, of having imbued them with and used them to express a sense of self that is unique, end quote. It is again the how that makes these rituals first rituals by definition and uniquely tailored to us and what we value, what we need, and what will elevate the quality of our lives. Only we can know what these vital signatures will be once we have taken the time to fully get to know ourselves. These ritual signatures add to why we value the life we love living, and the more we thoughtfully incorporate them into our days, the more amazing our life becomes. So when we design our own rituals, we add more meaning to our lives. And when we put our signature on these rituals, so we pick a particular tea that we learned about and savored on our travels, or if it's a particular time of day that we do something, there's significance to what that time of day means to us. In other words, the details are thoughtfully tended to. That is when we wake up our emotions and it becomes a ritual rather than a habit. We are savoring because either memories are involved, reminders of joyful moments, or a focus of what matters on of how we most enjoy living and why we live the way we do and where we are going, etc. We mentioned how rituals helped us to savor our life all the more. And this is where you get to design your life of rituals. This is where you now look at your life and elevate the ordinary in ways that will speak and nourish you. As Norton reminds, quote, there are endless ways to enhance and even enchant your day, end quote. From rituals around consumption of meals and drink, afternoon tea and aperitif, dessert, breakfast, you get the idea. Turn it into a ritual. Carefully choose not only the ingredients used, but the utensils and the plates, the setting, napkins, and where you dine, so that you can enjoy even more what you are going to be eating and or drinking. When we design daily and weekly rituals, and I have shared many ideas in 2 posts that I will link in the show notes, but I've also have oodles more, and I've linked to that page too. You'll have a whole list of ideas from these posts, but the first 2 are specific posts I think you might enjoy. We are generating more reasons to savor, and thus, quote, generating more everyday joy, an easily accessible and often inexpensive means of transforming the ordinary into something more, end quote. Here's a quote from the book about consumption rituals. Quote, consumption rituals remind us to savor, drawing more joy out of each moment of our lives, each memory, every sip, and any bite, end quote. So that's one area where we can introduce rituals, our food and drink, when we and how we enjoy those meals, the snacks, whatever they may be. Another area to introduce rituals that are signature rituals is our rediscovery rituals. Whether it is the cycle and thus return of the new seasons, perhaps you do something signature each time spring or fall or winter or summer for that matter arrives, and it's something that you savor. It's special and unique to you and perhaps someone you love as well. Or maybe on your birthday, while celebrating the start of your personal new year, you also reflect in your journals, not to dwell, but to serve as a reminder of growth and deepening appreciation. This is also where time capsules come into play. And he discusses this in the book. What rediscovery does is wake up, so to speak, the everyday, ordinary moments and help us to stay more fully in the present and become more aware of what is right now. Because, with regards to a time capsule, our journals remind us of this too. The way we live our lives right now will eventually change somehow and in some way. And if we're not savoring what we love about the life we love living right now, then we are throwing away an opportunity to elevate the quality of that every day right now. Again, it's a muscle. And so to have a ritual when certain times pass or arrive, so that's why the seasons, our birthday, could be anything. But that's why time capsules. When a class graduates, they put a time maybe put a time capsule somewhere, and then they revisit it on their class reunion. It just serves as a reminder of what was of value, what you value about something that cannot forever be present, but will always be appreciated. Yet another area of our lives that I have found to be very powerfully necessary to bolster our self confidence and inner trust is to engage in rites of passage rituals that we design. Now, there are a lot of legacy rituals that deal with rites of passage. Thinking about Bob mitzvahs or bar mitzvahs, um, um, any kind of graduation ceremony, marriages. I mean, these are all rites of passage, right? That different cultures and different institutions value. And it's a stepping into something new and an ending of something that has happened that's done with. And each of these are chapters that we live through. And those are the ones that people know about generally, but we all have our own personal chapters. And it is so important to honor these, even if no one else understands it, even if we don't want anyone else to be a part of it. We need to create a ritual for ourselves because it is important for us to honor the chapter we've just traveled through, even though there may have been ups and downs. Some things we don't remember, but to bring closure to how it brought us to where we are, and to remind us that we're now stepping forward into something new. When we design this signature ritual to mark the passage from one chapter to the next, we honor ourselves and move forward into the life we are now ready for, knowing it to be true. Yes, we are ready. And it also prevents us from lingering in that limbo land. It does. It provides that emotional closure and appreciation. So lack of regrets because we've savored, we've acknowledged, but then we also move forward. Maybe a rite of passage could be you're moving from one career to another, or one simply within the same company, but from one position to another. Or maybe you are retiring and moving away from the career you've spent decades at. These are not small nothings. So the retirement one is more visually acknowledged by a larger group of people. But if you're simply moving from one business or brand or company to another, or the people that you're moving into work with may not know where you came from, and the people that you were leaving, might not be a big deal to them in the sense that because you're leaving them. You're not retiring, you're changing jobs. But you need to mark this somehow for you. And it's significant to mark these moments because it reminds us of the truth and the decisions that we've made consciously. So, for example, when I retired from teaching, I know that some people didn't understand why I used the word retiring. But for me, it was vitally important that I used it because I was choosing to end a career I deeply loved. I would call it a calling in many aspects. It was chosen, it was cherished, it was a privilege. And I've written and shared many much about this. I won't talk about it in detail here, but the idea for me to use the word retirement was so important because it was 20 years in a career I valued, and I was not going to be doing it in the official capacity anymore. I have a pension waiting for me. I cannot claim it until I reach a certain age, but I do have a pension. And it was a way of me honoring for myself and speaking with pride to those in this profession that I deeply enjoyed working with, that this was not a small nothing, and I did not walk away because I didn't like the job. I stepped into something new and different, but it was with appreciation from where I came from. And so when my school, I have to share this because even if they wouldn't have done this, it was important for me to do something for myself to honor this rite of passage. But I was very grateful, without asking for this, that my school did use that language, retirement, and honored me along with the other retirees, of which there were just a couple. We were a very young staff, and gave me the same gift as they gave retirees. I didn't expect, nor even know they were going to do this, but when they did, it meant more than they will ever know. and I have it in a very special spot in my house. Again, it's this is a ritual in the sense that there was a lot of emotion tied up with us. And even if they hadn't given me that gift, I did various things in my own company and with my family to acknowledge that this was a retirement and I was moving and stepping into a new chapter of my life. And so if you have moments in your own life that are like this, that maybe the outside world, it's not the traditional thing to do, but for you, it is a new chapter you're beginning, that rite of passage. Honor it. Do something that lets you close well what's coming to an end, and step with confidence into the new chapter. Okay. When it comes to relationship rituals, the key, as I mentioned earlier in this episode, is for both parties to view the action as a ritual and see the value of doing so, see it as special. And thus, as I mentioned, studies have bore out the benefits. Relationships with shared rituals are stronger as couples and express a, quote, greater sense of gratitude for their partner, end quote. The intention of the action, the motivation behind doing it, the how that turns that choice from a habit to a ritual is something that's both deeply savored by both. And the rituals, just as in the case for our ordinary daily routine, the rituals we create for ourselves and with our partner need not be grand or expensive. This is partially why shared rituals with our partner are so powerful. They elevate those ordinary moments of daily life into something more enjoyable and more treasured. As well, another area of ritual is when it comes to the loss of a partner, a parent, anyone who we dearly care about, and this includes our pets. We need to engage in rituals here. And while there are some legacy rituals that may come into play, we also will want to make sure we include our own signature rituals. So it's the details, the how, that is important to us. The rituals help us work through the grieving process while keeping that love alive. When it comes to work, rituals can absolutely come into play both with our colleagues and on our own. Rituals can be helpful in deepening our commitment and productivity, as well as helping us to appreciate what we do and feel appreciated. As someone who works from home now, I know many of you do as well. Creating rituals at home to demarcate the start and end of the workday are not only uplifting, but necessary for our well-being. But if we do work in an office or away from home, we can add rituals to how we engage by concluding or starting the day, how we end the day and move into our personal life. Rituals such as the music we listen to or the podcasts we tune into when we step out of the office, either into our car or onto the train. This helps us begin to unwind and settle into the life away from work. Again, those are just a variety of arenas in your life where you can incorporate rituals. And it might take time to figure out which to add or which ones to add or where to add them. But I encourage you to, in every area that was just discussed, make sure you have at least one. And I think you will find that you add enrichment, as he calls it, enchantment to your life. And this, I think, will inspire you to add more when you are ready and know what those rituals could be that will best suit you. So while there are many more arenas of life that we could add rituals, those I think are the ones that are on both sides of the fence, positive and constructive as far as, joyful and celebratory, but also ones that we can't control, but they will happen in our lives. And this is also important. It's not about the quantity of rituals. It's about the quality of rituals that you infuse your life with, because when you do them thoughtfully and tailor them to you, they will add more meaning, there will be more appreciation, and you will be savoring more. Simply by making changes or intentional transformation to our ordinary routines has an extraordinary power that elevates the quality of our life. Rituals provide the magic, so to speak. Now, when we put in just a little more effort, a little more thoughtful exploration of what speaks to us, so using our self-knowledge, which requires us to be brave and add a dash of our individuality, we tailor then our everydays from beginning to end to be days that we look forward to living each and every day. So, the book is titled The Ritual Effect: From Habit to Ritual, Harness the Surprising Power of Everyday Actions by Michael Norton. And I hope this provides a reminder to not think that rituals are frivolous, because they're not. They can be life enhancers to the nth degree if we bring intention to them. And also to maybe do an audit of the legacy rituals that we follow. And maybe they're actually habits or routines now. Either we let them go or we bring more intention to them. Maybe add a piece, like we said, a dash of individuality to it. Maybe it's a holiday ritual that you need to bring a little bit more of you to it. And be brave, speak up. You're part of this ritual that your family supposedly really appreciates. And if you want to be a part of it and they want you to be a part of it, which I know they do, and it sounds like you do too, if you don't want to let it go, then tweak it a little bit, add a little something. And that right there brings more emotion, and therefore more full engagement and appreciation. All right. So I will link the book on the show notes. You can find all the other links that I mentioned, because we have talked about rituals so much on this podcast and the blog, as well as habits. If you have a handful also of past posts and episodes to explore that I thought would dive deeper into certain areas that we discussed today. So check out those notes at the simplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast 380. And I'll be right back, as promised, with a spring recipe to savor. All right, welcome back to this week's Petit Plaisir. And oh ho ho, it is a delicious one. We are going to make an asparagus courgette with ricotta savory spring tart. And it really can be made in 20 minutes. So I came across this recipe in the most recent issue, the US issue of the English Home magazine. And I saw it and I was like, oh my gosh. You know, I love making tarts. I love making fruit tarts in the summertime and fruit tarts in the winter with apples, with the berries in the summertime. But in the springtime, the berries aren't ready. They're not fresh yet. They're not seasonal. And the rhubarb in my garden isn't ready yet. But I know in many of your gardens, the rhubarb is ready to rock and roll, and the strawberries too, but not yet here. So what is ready are some vegetables. And so we're making an asparagus with some courgettes. And I know courgettes are not in season right now, but I will add these to it because they provide a meatiness that provides depth of flavor for the other ingredients. It's a very neutral vegetable. I love having a courgette or zucchini, as we call it here in the States, because it does add whatever flavor you are incorporating with it. And then of course we have the ricotta cheese. And I adapted this recipe a little bit because I'm using spring onions as well to add a little more depth of flavor. And these are spring onions, so they're the long, narrow, green stemmed ones with a small white bulb at the bottom. And you're going to use the white and the green. All right, so what you need is a puff pastry. Now, I make my puff pastry, which is why it might take a little longer if you make puff pastry, but not a lot. Puff pastry is so easy to make. Or you can just pick it up and use it. And that's what will make this only a 20-minute make recipe. All right. So let's walk through this really quickly. It is so simple. So if you're making your puff pastry, you can just use the classic savory tart recipe that I use, and I've used multiple times. And all you have to do is make it 30 minutes ahead of time. And you have your cup of flour, half a cup of butter, a pinch of salt, and use a food processor. You pulse it until it's looks like sand, and then you add your 1 to 2 cold tablespoons of water. That's it. That's all you need to do. Now, what I use for this recipe, because I really wanted to add more flaky flavor, I used Paul Hollywood's rough puff pastry. Now, I don't roll mine out multiple times for this particular tart, but you can. I just made it, put in the fridge, and 30 minutes later used it, and it was just lovely, buttery. Oh, just so good. So I included his recipe on the show notes. If you want to make his rough puff pastry, it's really, really simple. But you can also use the one I just shared. That was mine. That's also very, very simple. Okay. So you have that in the refrigerator chilling. Even if it's the one you picked up at the store, take it out of the freezer, put it in the refrigerator so it's just still going to be cold. Now we're going to make the ingredients. So I want you to preheat your oven to either 200 degrees Celsius or approximately 390 degrees degree Fahrenheit. So 390 Fahrenheit, 200 Celsius. Now we're going to blanch the asparagus. Now, if you have really young asparagus, you don't have to do a darn thing. They're really, really narrow asparagus. But if you have thick asparagus, they might have really rough ends. So I would chop off about an inch or an inch and a half of the bottom of all of the asparagus. Don't break the asparagus like you would if you're cooking it like some people do. For this recipe, don't do that. You're going to waste too much asparagus and you want to use all of it. Just if you have the real thick ends, chop off that end. Bring the water to boil in about a medium size pot of water. Still, you can salt the water. I would salt the water, but not too much. And you're going to just, once it comes to a boil, you're going to drop all the asparagus spears into that. And you have 500 grams of asparagus, a good healthy handful. Good healthy handful. And just let them boil for 4 to 5 minutes until they turn brilliant bright green. Okay, this will just take the toughness out of them, but also make them really easy to cook quickly on top of the tart. Then you'll drain them, place them on a paper towel. And what I want you to do is set aside 4 full spears. Set aside 4 full spears. And the rest you're going to slice lengthwise. These are the ones you're going to put on top of the tart. Those 4 are going to be put into the food processor to make the spread. So there's going to be asparagus in the spread, which is what I love about the various layers of spring flavor in this tart. So that takes us to the food processor. So in the food processor, roughly chop up those 4 spears that you've blanched. Add garlic. You want 1 clove of peeled garlic. You do not have to chop it. Add 1 large egg. Add 2 tablespoons of freshly grated Parmigiano Reggiano and only 150 grams of the ricotta. So you have more ricotta than that. You have 250 grams of ricotta. I only want you to add 150 grams of the ricotta. You're going to pulse until this is smooth. Add a little bit of lemon juice, a little bit of fleur de sel or salt, and freshly ground pepper. Taste it. Do you like it? If not, add a little more lemon, salt, or pepper, whatever it's lacking to your taste. Okay, now we may not be done with that. You're going to have an option here. Now I want you to saute the chopped, so you're just going to finely chop in rounds. Just do the rounds of the spring onion. You don't have to finely chop it into little mini pieces. Just slice it like you would a rounds of an onion, a regular onion, green and white, 2 to 3 of these. And put the spring onions that are chopped into a small saute pan with about a half a tablespoon to a tablespoon of butter or olive oil, whichever you prefer. I like butter. And you just want to cook them on medium heat until they're translucent. Now you have a choice here. You can either add those sauteed spring onions to the spread in the food processor and pulse until combined, or you can just wait and we'll just add them to the top with those courgettes and the asparagus. All right. So now you've rolled out your tart pastry. So whether it's the one you made from scratch or the puff pastry you picked up, roll it out into whatever shape or size you want. So I don't put this in a tart pan. This is what I love about this. It's so simple. I just put it on parchment paper as a rectangle and I roll it out to however rectangular size that this dough will get to. And it's about, I would say it's about 12 by 8. So it's going to serve about 8 people. Now you're also going to add a little edge. You're going to add a little edge to the tart. So you're going to cut off about, a half an inch of the tart all the way around, or extra if you have extra dough, and just layer that on the edge all the way around the tart pastry. And this will add height and designate the edge as well, and also give you the border to where you put your spread. So you're going to put the spread all in the middle of this tart shell or pastry until you get to the raised edge. You do not have to do anything else to the edge to make this look good, taste good, nothing else. That's it. That's all you have to do. Now you're going to put the spread that you've made in the food processor into the middle of the tart pan, spread it from corner to corner, and then layer the thinly sliced courgette. So you have one large courgette, and I'm going to say one large courgette here. Keep the skin on and thinly slice it lengthwise. I would put so many more vegetables on the top than what you're going to see in the picture on the show notes. I put just a small baby courgette and the asparagus, and I had leftover asparagus. Next time I would put a whole large courgette slice and all of my asparagus, all of my 500-gram asparagus minus those 4 that I took out. The more the better. You want a good vegetable bite. It's going to be so tender. It's going to be so delicious. Just put more on there. So layer those on there as neatly or as unneatly as you prefer. Then add the onions if you haven't added the onions into the spread. And then put a few more dollops of that remaining ricotta cheese everywhere, just kind of like you would a pizza. And season it with salt and pepper. And drizzle it with olive oil. Brush with egg wash the edges of the tart if you want to make those nice and brown and lovely. And then you're just going to pop that into the oven for 25 minutes. And that's it. That is it. It is so delicious and simple. It is wonderful right out of the oven. Pair it with a crisp glass of white wine. Or we're getting into spring and almost summer now, so grab that rosé. I just picked up my first rosé of the spring season. I'm at Trader Joe's the other day. And it's also very good as a leftover cold, chilled. So definitely enjoy it for lunch. But it's just a simple meal that just signifies spring. Talk about a ritual, right? There's always usually a spring tart that I make, whether I've shared the recipe or not. But I do this for almost all the seasons. There's a tart that just signifies, okay, we're moving into the season. So I need to do that with more intention next time. But this one definitely was done with intention. Savored it in mid-April, and it was, and I actually did enjoy this outside. Oh, that was lovely on the garden porch, with the birds chirping away. So anyway, I will put the recipe up on the blog. You can find that at thesimplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast380, or you can go directly to the recipes in the blog. The recipes are found under the menu that says Cooking Show. Drop down menu will say Cooking Show episodes or recipes. Click on recipes and it'll take you to that. You'll find that under the dinner category. All right. I hope you give this one a try. It is very simple and very delicious with a little bit of decadence with that ricotta spread. I hope you've enjoyed this week's Petit Plaisir, where each week ideas are shared to make the everyday all the more enjoyable. Tune in at the end of each episode where I'll recommend a book, a film, a show, a recipe, anything that is a simple pleasure to satiate your sophisticated taste. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I so enjoyed your company. And I look forward to bringing you 2 new episodes this month. So May, there are 3 new podcast episodes. The next one will be on the 15th. And then because British Week, the 6th annual British Week kicks off the 19th through the 26th, there will be a new episode, and it is British inspired, as you would imagine, on the 22nd. I do hope you'll join me. And in the meantime, I'll see you on the blog. Bonne journée. Thank you for tuning in to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. For more ideas and inspiration throughout the week, visit the blog, The Simply Luxurious Life, with the shortened URL TSLL.co or thesimplyluxuriouslife.com. For more in-depth exploration of how to cultivate your own unique, simply luxurious life, pick up my new book, which became both a bestseller and #1 new release in France Travel, The Road to Le Papillon, Daily Meditations on True Contentment. Available in all 4 formats for your preferred reading or listening. My first book, titled Choosing the Simply Luxurious Life, and my second book, Living the Simply Luxurious Life, are also available in each of the 4 formats. Readers can now join the more intimate The Simply Luxurious Life international community by becoming members of the blog, which offers the benefits of ad-free reading site-wide, unlimited access and exclusive access to content on the blog, such as the monthly A Couple Moments with Shannon video chat, tours of my home Le Papillon, the monthly What Made Me Smile post, and monthly Ponderings post, as well as the exclusive opportunity to enter all of the giveaways during the annual French and British weeks. To stay caught up on all things Simply Luxurious, the podcast, blog post, the cooking show, and receive exclusive news, as well as an extra dose of inspiration to jumpstart each new month, subscribe to the Simply Luxurious Live's free monthly newsletter, arriving on the last day of each month in your inbox. There is also a weekly newsletter, which is also free, and arrives each Friday to keep you caught up on the recent weekly posts on the blog. Enjoy with a hot cuppa or cup of morning coffee, and stay in the know about all things Simply Luxurious. Look for 2 new episodes of this podcast on the first and third Wednesday of each month. And until next time, I'm your host, Shannon Ables. Thank you for tuning in. Bonne journée.